ahead and stand up. Let's face the flag. Say the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And let's pause for a moment of silence before we start. Amen. Commissioners, you had a chance, hopefully, to look over the agenda. And if so, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Widmer to adopt the agenda. Do I have a second? A second from Jane Alexander. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to adopt the agenda signify by saying aye. Okay. Time for my communications, and the only thing I want to say is that probably the same thing I said last week. The town has a long history of processes that we use when we're dealing with planning and zoning issues or building issues and so forth. And all I ask the community to do is let those processes play out. We can't circumvent the process. It's been set long by precedent. It's been looked over. The state approves that type of process and so forth. So if everyone will let the process play out, and it will, and then we can move on with what we have to do next. Other than that, hoping everybody's getting their COVID shots. I hope you're still planning on, I hope you're still honoring social distancing, washing your hands, and wearing masks. And I don't have on mine because it's hard to conduct this meeting and you hear me if I don't have one on. Okay. Alex, would you cover the consent agenda, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Tonight on your consent agenda, you have the February 11th Town Council meeting minutes. That is it. If I could go into my communications, we were contacted by the Land of Sky today about the stimulus package that was just passed in Washington. And the Land of Sky had a very Spartan email saying that this is how much money we expect to receive for each municipality. And by Montreat, at $250,000. $250,000. So I do not know what strings are attached or really any of the details about that money. But we do have a meeting next Thursday to talk about that distribution. So I'll hopefully be learning more, and Commissioner Alexander will be learning more. We'll be able to bring that back. And that's it for my communications tonight.
Okay, that covers your communications also, right? Okay, Commissioners, you've received the administrative reports from Finance, Planning and Zoning, Police, Public Works and Water, Sanitation and Streets. Any questions, comments on those?
Mr. Mayor, I have just one comment or just one question.
Yes, Commissioner Lentz.
On the streets report, which is page 13. Specifically on the monthly fuel costs. Just such a big discrepancy there, and I'm just wondering between 20 and 21 why it dropped so much.
On that right there, that is actually the actual fuel cost. The streets trucks, the maintenance that the street departments are doing, they're not really having to use trucks, they're using equipment. And during this past month, Michael has been staying at the shop, just taking care of all of our equipment, cleaning, making sure everything's up to par. That's why the fuel mileage was down. Kind of trying to save us the best we can.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Barry. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move to public comments now. We've gotten quite a few letters, and Angie's going to read those into the record, and we're going to read half of them now and half of them in the second public comment section. So Angie, turn it over to you, dear.
The first one is from G. Wayne Drummond. He's the manager of Georgia Lodge. I would like to know if an environmental impact study will be required before the proposed resort on Assembly Drive moves forward. I believe it should be required. I'm incredulous that MRA would prioritize this new resort when they have their college summer staff paying to live in substandard, partially condemned lodges. The second one is from Kyle Kirk. To whom it may concern, I've recently been informed that the town of Montreat had approved an upcoming hotel lodge development along Assembly Drive. I'd like to raise my concerns that the new lodge construction is not in the best interest of local residents, nor do I believe that the additional hospitality occupancy is necessary for the growth of Montreat. I contend that the current council members have a responsibility to evaluate the impact of the lodge that will have on local traffic, assess the resulting economic harm to other local businesses such as the nearby Georgia Lodge, and include local homeowners in approval of the planning and construction process. Despite attentively reading local Montreat Black Mountain news, I feel that the public officials who have either tacitly or explicitly given the project approval have failed to properly inform the public of the development plan and its harms. Respectfully, Kyle Kirk. The next one is from Margie Hayner. I understand that you all will be discussing allowing for a change in the setback rules. This one said it was for the commission, but it was to planning and zoning. So I read it for both. I understand that you will be discussing allowing for a change in the setback rules in order to allow for a huge hotel to be built next to our home in the center of beautiful Montreat. I'm absolutely against this rule change or making an exception to the rule. The setback laws were put there for a reason, and that is to protect the quality of life of each person in each property in Montreat. Margie Hayner. This one is from Ann Hayner, 319 Assembly Drive. To the town commissioners of Montreat, I'm writing out of anguish for the future of Montreat if the MRA is allowed to build their proposed hotel on Assembly Drive. Calling it a lodge is a euphemism. It is a 50-room hotel, which would dominate the historic neighborhood and forever change the feel of Montreat. Instead of the heart of the town being a blend of residential and institutional, it would be dominated by a huge commercial structure. In short, this hotel would destroy the quality of life in Montreat, and I oppose it in any form. It would degrade the environment by threatening water quality, land stability, and wildlife. Potential environmental devastation is frightening and can have an impact on the entire valley. Construction of the hotel would erase irreplaceable Montreat history by tearing down two of our oldest buildings, Chestnut Lodge and the Lord Apartments, as well as the beautifully restored Galax House, which is a landmark of the town. It would shatter the peace and quiet we treasure, the sound of the stream, the glow of the fireflies in the dark, the breadth of the mountains, and replace it with noise, light, and traffic. I have loved Montreat for more than 60 years, visiting my grandparents at By the Way on Assembly Drive frequently since the 50s. I was married in Gaither Chapel, as my parents were 30 years before me. My children have grown up sitting on the porch swing and climbing the lookout just as their grandparents did. My generation has now inherited care of the house built by my great-grandmother, Elizabeth Benedict Foreman, more than 110 years ago, as well as care of the community which has nourished us. I remember my grandmother, Irena Foreman Williams, pointing to the towering trees in the front yard and describing jumping over them as a child when they were first planted. It was an early and deep lesson in the close connections between past and present, and in generational identity of the beloved place. I will not give up on this beloved place which has been so important to our family for generations, and thus I am called to absolutely oppose construction of the proposed hotel. I realize that no item is yet on the town council agenda concerning the hotel, but as our elected representatives, it is your responsibility to protect the community and to respond to the concerns of residents and homeowners. Before talking about a new comprehensive plan for Montreat, you need to first take action to stop a building on Assembly Drive, which would forever alter the feel of the community. Only then can a constructive community-wide conversation take place about priorities and planning for the future of Montreat. Ann Hanger. This one is from Priscilla Hayner, 319 Assembly Drive. Dear Commissioners, I write to express my strong opposition to the proposed development of a large hotel or lodge on Assembly Drive, which is currently in the design stage by the MRA. However, perhaps more to the point, I'm also writing to express concern for the process and the apparent lack of engagement by public officials in an issue that is of great concern to those who love Montreat and which may have a profound impact on the look and feel of the town. The environmental impact, the raising of the oldest home in Montreat, plus 2 additional historic homes, and the possible violation of existing zoning laws all raise very significant questions that need due consideration. I am thus perplexed, I have to say, by the assertion that I have heard that council members and the mayor feel they cannot or should not comment or engage on an issue until the date it is formally put to them in the form of a permit request. This is at odds with any usual notion of public representation, but perhaps I've misunderstood. If constituent and other cottage owners who might not vote Montreat but do pay taxes feel that their interest, that is, their experience of Montreat and what they value in the special place, are affected by a proposed development, I do hope that you all as public representatives will help us find a process by which all voices can be heard and considered. When I attended the Commissioners' Retreat last week virtually, I heard the proposal for a comprehensive plan update. That process strikes me as the perfect opportunity for the community of Montreat, all interested parties, to debate and agree on a shared vision for the future of the town. Public input and the exchange of views is key for this kind of process. I do not believe that such an important set of decisions in the short term should be channeled into a relatively short and narrow procedure considering a permit application for a major development that would stand in the center of town. I also urge the council to find a way to open a robust community conversation, and meanwhile it would seem appropriate to ask the MRA to hold off on any major development proposals until the comprehensive plan update has been completed. With many thanks, Priscilla Hanger. The next one is from Kate Hayner. Kate Hayner. I think she's also 319 Assembly Drive. Dear members of the Board of Commissioners, I own the home directly next to the proposed new 48 to 50 room hotel to be built on Assembly Drive at By the Way, located at 319 Assembly Drive. I'm concerned about this plan and I strongly object to it. Our house is one of the historical homes built in 1908 by my great-great-grandmother, who was also the first school teacher in Montreat and a founding member of the church. My concerns are as follows. We were never contacted or informed about this proposed hotel. No neighbors I have spoken to were informed or contacted. I only found out through a text from a neighbor who heard of it informally. We have not been consulted for our input in this project. We did request a meeting with Mr. DeBose, and he did show us his plans. About 8 neighbors attended this with us. Mr. DeBose told us in the meeting that he planned to start building by the end of the year. Mr. DeBose also told us that he plans to own our property and Georgia Lodge within 10 years. Neither we or Georgia Lodge plan to sell our homes. This implies that there is a larger plan for the location and that our current home is of no interest in the decision making. This proposed location is the heart of a very historic neighborhood and would remove 3 historic homes and impact the same neighborhood adversely. While I have learned that public comment occurs after a permit is applied for, the notices of the public comment time is by mail to the first name on the tax record. This may take up to 2 weeks to be received, severely limiting any time for public comment or for evidence needed in the 8 items in the zoning ordinance. The Montreat property and homeowners will shoulder the increased tax burden of this hotel and are not being consulted. This does not align with the comprehensive plan for the town of Montreat, which was approved in 2008. This will severely impact the quiet enjoyment of our home. Traffic will increase in an already congested area. I am hopeful that there will be an opportunity for all stakeholders to discuss this plan in a way that allows for full transparency and time. I personally believe that this should occur before a permit is applied for when the plans have already been determined. Thank you for your service to Montreat. Kate Hayner. This one is from Jeff Ritchie. To whom it may concern, I am writing as a 5th generation Montreater to express my concern regarding the proposed construction of a 33,000 square foot, 50 room contemporary hotel complex with an underground garage directly across the street from my cherished family home at 305 Georgia Terrace. I think they left out a little bit, but I think it's supposed to say I oppose this plan utterly and completely. My reasons for doing so are in part personal, but they also transcend any personal interest to encompass concerns that all of us should hold dear. Most of the original 4,000 acres of land incorporated into the town in 1897 is maintained in a forest conservation trust, and like the rest of southern Appalachia, Montreat lies within a mixed mesophatic temperate rainforest. When the realities of the world draw too close, I sometimes close my eyes and imagine opening them to look out from the porch of my family home at 305 Georgia Terrace to see pines, hemlocks, oaks, maples, sourwoods, and other trees stirring gently in the breeze. This vision cheers me, gives me hope, and lends me strength to continue in my work. If this plan moves forward, then such a view will have to remain strictly within my mind's eye. The construction of this hotel complex will mean that my porch view will consist of the hotel's roof, churning HVAC units, and perhaps a glimpse or two into the rooms of unwary guests. Of course, my fellow cottagers on Georgia Terrace will be confronted with the same eyesore. But the negative consequences of this construction, terrible as they may be, go well beyond its erosion of curb appeal and property values for long-term cottager families. Assembly Drive was not built to sustain the massive weight and abrasive impact of the cement trucks and other large construction equipment that will be coming and going for months at a time. Drilling into the bedrock of the hillside where Galax House now stands, pouring concrete, discharging hydrocarbons, metals, and radiation from the water-soluble uranium, radium, and thorium that is present in concrete aggregate, leaching toxins and leaking runoff into the groundwater through Flat Creek, which flows just feet away from the proposed construction site. In an era of undeniable climate change that has brought more severe storms and hotter summers to Montreat year after year, it is incredible to see plans to massively increase the amount of impermeable surfaces in town. Surfaces that will enable uncontrolled stormwater to flood not only our streams, but our streets, playgrounds, and parks, while simultaneously reducing the amount of tree cover and wildlife habitat, replacing with blacktop and concrete that will draw and radiate heat into the cool sanctuary that Montreat has always been during the summers. Others have already contacted the town regarding violations in both the letter and the spirit of zoning codes that such construction is bound to incur. So I will not speak to those legal issues except to say that these laws and covenants exist to to protect the very resources that I have described above as threatened by the project. I will point out, however, that I find it ironic that Richard DeBose, the current president of the Mountain Retreat Association, has publicly remarked that in 2008, Montreat missed opportunities for development and that we're not going to let that happen again. This is ironic to me because in 2007, 1 year prior to the alleged missed opportunities, the MRA joined with the town of Montreat, Montreat College, Montreat Trail Club, the Wilderness Committee, the Wilderness and Open Space Committee, and the Certified Wildlife Habitat Program to organize the Montreat Land Care Committee, with the Earth Ministry team of Montreat Presbyterian Church later signing on as a partner to the effort. The goal of this multi-stakeholder, multi-agency initiative was to ensure the continuation of the long tradition of ecological stewardship begun by the MRA in the early 1900s when Dr. R.C. Anderson, Mr. DeBose's distant predecessor as MRA president, fought logging in Montreat. In 1910, Montreat had granted a right-of-way for a logging railway to be built through the town's acreage to Graveyard Mountain and Mount Mitchell. In order for logging to begin, the contract required the signature of the MRA president, which Dr. Anderson refused to provide once he realized that logging would devastate Montreat's forested environment. 2 years later, Dr. Anderson discovered that the logs were nonetheless being transported on the railway along Montreat's East Ridge and through other areas of the town. This inaugurated a decade-long legal fight that Dr. Anderson ultimately won, guaranteeing that logging operations would not disrupt the pristine, quiet, and leafy green beauty of Montreat. In the years to come, Montreat's forest management policies would be guided by Dr. Anderson's foresight, leaving as small a footprint of human intrusion as possible, an especially important consideration given that the Montreat wilderness is contiguous with, or in close proximity to, several large natural preserve areas. In 2016, Montreat was named a Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation in recognition of the role played by its extensive and diverse forested lands in boosting health, wildlife, watershed integrity, saved energy cost, erosion control, property values, and sustainable tourism. We Richies have been in Montreat since 1918, when my great-grandmother, Marie Brewer Ritchie, purchased the house on Georgia Terrace for $1 from the family of her close friend, Mrs. J.B. Bryan, who passed away in the terrible pandemic of that year. To that $1 investment made more than a century ago, we Richies have added decades of love and memories. For us, Montreat is all of these things: gravitational center, museum of family history, and living source of identity and refreshment for young and old. Now, more than a century after Dr. Anderson saved Montreat from deforestation, more than a century after my ancestors acquired our family home in Montreat's oldest residential neighborhood, and more than a century after the last great pandemic to strike the world, I find myself in yet another pandemic year worrying about whether my family's mountain retreat will be as available to the next 5 generations of Richies as it has been for the previous 5. Around the same time as Dr. Anderson's pioneering ecological efforts, U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt warned of short-sighted men who, in their greed and selfishness, will, if permitted, rob our country of half its charm by their reckless extermination of all useful, beautiful, and wild things. Roosevelt went on to say that our duty to the whole, including the unborn generation, bids us to restrain an unprincipled present-day minority from wasting the heritage of these unborn generations. I have heard it said disparagingly that those who oppose this construction project want Montreat to remain in the past. It would be wise to remember the present is not always referable to the past. Indeed, If by the past we mean the truly conservative spirit and efforts of men such as Anderson and Roosevelt, then by God, I would very much like to see Montreat remain in the past. To those who wish to move on in the future, I simply say this: you have Asheville. Isn't that already enough? Sincerely, Jeff Ritchie. And the last one for this period is from Robert Warner, 346 Chapman Road. Dear Mayor Chapman, Dear Mayor, Commissioners, and Administrators, I wish to address the current controversy concerning the construction of a lodge and meeting rooms on Assembly Drive in the location of the current Galax House. I will limit my comments to two issues: zoning and reaffirmation of the responsibility of the mayor and commissioners in a representative democracy to represent the interests of the citizens of Montreat. With respect to zoning, the proposed lodge and conference center represents a prima facie violation of the Montreat zoning ordinance. The lodge is to be located in an institutional residential zone. It requires a conditional use permit for Montreat zoning regulations per section 704.1. The purpose of this IR zoning district is to provide for a zone of transition between purely residential and purely institutional districts. The operative word here is transition. In this particular instance, the authors of the Montreat zoning ordinance further reinforce this element of transition with a specifically designated second purpose: to provide for protected property values in areas which are predominantly residential in character. This area is predominantly residential in character, as well as being historic. The Galax House can be viewed both in size and in architectural style as transitional. A modern 33,000 square foot 50-room lodge plus meeting rooms at this location on Assembly Drive cannot rationally be referred to as transitional. The proposed lodge cannot be built in this location. To do so violates any honest reading of the IR zoning specified in the Montreat zoning ordinance. Rather than aligning to the designated IR zoning, a huge facility in this location defeats and renders null and void the IR zoning itself. It simply turns an IR zone into an institutional zone. Secondly, I wish to address the stated concerns of the citizens of Montreat, which you are no doubt already far more aware than I. If I may direct you to page 2 of the Town of Montreat Comprehensive Plan of April 2008, wherein the Montreat vision, as well as the mission statement of the board, is given to us as follows: to seek ways to maintain and improve the quality of life, preserve the natural beauty, and promote responsible growth while maintaining our community image, heritage, and traditions. According to the tabulation of 373 surveys which appears in this plan, the item of greatest concern to Montreat residents and property owners by an overwhelming margin is preservation of character. And in this, perhaps you find a mandate from the citizens. I believe you've already heard from, or will soon hear from, those you represent, detailing the many ways in which this proposed new facility runs counter to the mission statement of the board and to the preservation of the character of Montreat. Many believe it reduces the quality of life, alters and threatens natural beauty, promotes irresponsible growth, and disrespects community image, heritage, and traditions. Heather Williams has offered this following information at the Montreat Stewards email site. Ms. Williams is a professor at Pomona College in California. She was a co-founder of a community-based water monitoring, education, stewardship project in the Lake Titicaca Basin in Peru and Bolivia. This is major construction that will affect the integrity of Assembly Drive It will require many heavy cement trucks and field trucks and house trucks, plus giant drills to put pylons into bedrock many feet below the surface of the slope, which is probably a lot more weight, wear, and tear than assembly drive was designed to bear. Construction also will affect Flat Creek. I expect that even if the construction companies in charge have barriers to downslope transport of solids, there will be discharge of hydrocarbons, metals, and probably radiation. The radiation comes from naturally occurring uranium, radium, and thorium that is present in a lot of concrete aggregate, and it is soluble in water. It's a very big concern with the construction of an underground parking garage on a mountain slope that feeds groundwater into the stream just a few feet away. An underground parking garage will leach that radiation plus hydrocarbons from leaking automobile oil and automotive gunk for as long as the garage exists into streams and wells. Additionally, this conference center hotel complex will increase the permeable surfaces on the site by a degree of magnitude. That means a lot of uncontrolled stormwater runoff into the stream and a loss of considerable amounts of tree cover and wildlife habitat. I don't know that MRA or anyone else has a legal right to build a structure that will have those kinds of impacts. Amy Hay, Alexander Hancock, and many others have spoken eloquently of the need to preserve the character, heritage, and traditions of Montreat. Ms. Hancock describes Montreat as a state of the heart, a special place because of the kind of people who settled it and have been coming back for over 100 years. Ms. Hancock has already written to the town council, stating her wish to preserve the character of Montreat with respect to those who founded and built the town, those who live there now, and for generations to come. I will close by asking that the mayor and commissioners listen to and follow the wishes of the citizens. Perhaps you can appreciate that this matter is disturbing to the citizens of Montreat. There is at least the appearance the mayor and commissioners have known about this plan for quite some time, while almost all the citizens did not and are now shocked to learn of it. Mr. DuBose made clear the MRA's reasons for this in a February 17th Zoom meeting with a group of citizens. Obviously, with some of the past scrapes the MRA and the town have been in prior to my arrival, we wanted to avoid that at all costs. I hope and believe that the elected officials of Montreat do not share this point of view. Mr. DuBose further stated that there were missed opportunities in the past, and we're not going to let that happen again. Who is this we that is able to dictate to the community? Mr. DuBose also informed those in the Zoom meeting that the prior zoning administrator had reviewed the plans and responded, "I don't see any major challenges." In the words of Mr. DuBose, "I'm not quite sure exactly what we're going to have to go to the town for in terms of permission." This is somewhat alarming. Is the government of Montreat now oligarchy? The MRA doesn't need permission. The MRA is not going to let that happen again. The citizens are best kept out of the loop to avoid anything similar to past scrapes. Abraham Lincoln spoke of government of the people, by the people, for the people. It is not only an American ideal. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. With the leadership of the mayor and council, let us secure this right for the people of Montreat as well. A good place to start would be for the town council to delineate the specific problem or problems with respect to the future of Montreat that the MRA is seeking to resolve, as well as all the possible solutions and alternatives that properly should be considered. This should be put before the citizens and or a citizens commission and their input solicited. Rational and fair planning would emerge from this. Sincerely, Robert Warner. That's all for this time.
Angie, appreciate you reading all those. We'll read the other ones that we received in the second section of the public comment here shortly. But ask those people who are writing the letters, though, to trying not to make them so long. It's not that we don't want to listen to them, but there's a lot of family history in there that we need you to stick to the facts and so forth. I know your feelings are very uptight about this situation, and we understand that. Okay. Next item on the agenda is item 8 under old business, Texas road update. Alex, you want to bring us up to date, or is Barry going to bring us up to date? Barry Creasman, Superintendent of Public Works.
What I'll start out with is an email. For all our discussion last month, or my discussion with Tom McKinney. Just after that, was I put together a little list for CDC to answer. Asked me to double check the flood map. Absolutely positive for all that laid on that screen up there. The flood mapping link, researched, found out that the flood mapping does regulate some of the stuff. Asked him about log holders, and he said the design for the log holders require the same footprint that a ready rock wall or a vertical rock wall, which would be a concrete footer. And he said it would be actually 50% is what he gets more than a concrete ready rock wall, because we would have to outsource the stones. We'd have to go and find the perfect stones to build a wall over. He said they wouldn't just take any stones and put in there because you need it to be stable and to last. Let's see. I did ask him about a creek rock. His filler gave me baskets and colored baskets. He said the price of what creek rock is right now still a large increase over any of the other designs. There was somebody mentioned mattress plans. We would look into that to see if we could work something like that into the plan. He's going to check on the availability of color. If we decide to go with a concrete ready rock or vertical rock, we're going to look at like natural color. And last but not least, rock veneering the knee wall to see if we can put something in place to kind of resemble what's already there. But they had emailed me a picture of the design that they're working on. And you'll see a cross section of the ready block wall and a vertical block similar, except they fill the center of it with gravel. This here is the one that they're going to look into designing for us. And then there's an example, which is
Vertiblock's a lot less expensive.
from what he's saying, it's still going to be a little more expensive than gave you baskets. But yeah, it's going to be less expensive. An example of the vertiblock would be on Texas Spur.
Yeah.
And ready block wall is what we've got behind us. Yeah, the concrete already died. So, yeah. But that's what we're worried about.
Other questions, Barry?
I have a question. Which one has the longest life? Which one is,
With the gaming baskets or the ready rock, we're going to get a lifetime of service out of it. It's the hardest part of it is design. It's starting out with footers. Without a good footer, they're all going to fail. So with the ready block, they've got to figure out how to keep the water away from it while they actually make a concrete footer. So that's the challenge.
Tom?
I heard you say Ready Rock, but did I also hear you say Verdi Block?
Vertical block is a tie.
Oh, so that's just a different brand.
It's just a different brand. Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other questions, Barry?
I got to researching it, looking it up online a little bit. Kind of cool. I thought I'm going to look vertical block. Good one. On their homepage is the vertical
paying us for that. Thanks, Barry.
That's all I have at this time, other than they are trying to push permits as fast as they can. So, they got a lot of work.
Appreciate you doing all that research, and Tom, I appreciate you and Kitty meeting with Barry to go over that stuff. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Barry. Item 9 is new business. Under new business, we've got a slew of appointments. Item A is appointment of Philip Arnold to the Audit Committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Widmer. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Alexander. Discussion? Comments? All those in favor of appointing Philip Arnold to the Audit Committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes carry. Congratulations, Philip, and thank you for your service. Appointment of Hugh Alexander, it sounds like a dubious character there, to the Audit Committee also. Do I have a motion, Jane? Yeah, you can do that.
I move.
Have a motion from Jane Alexander to appoint Hugh Alexander to the Audit Committee. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second from Commissioner Otto. Beat you to the punch, that punch, Alice. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Hugh, and thank you. Appointment of Eleanor James to the Board of Adjustments. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the appointment of Eleanor James to the Board of Adjustment for a term of 3 years to expire on January 31st, 2024.
Thank you, Alice. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Widmer. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Same sign. Jane, let's see, Eleanor James is now on the Board of Adjustments. Congratulations, Eleanor. Appointment of Bill Shy to the Open Space Conservation.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the appointment of Bill Shy to the Open Space Conservation Committee for a term of 2 years to expire on January 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Lentz. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Alexander. Discussion? Questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item E, appointment of Mason Blake to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Move to approve the appointment of Mason Blake to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a term of 3 years to expire on January 31st, 2024.
Thank you, Commissioner Otto. Do I have a second?
A second.
Have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. Item F, appointment of Mark Spence to the Board of Adjustment. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the appointment of Mark Spence to the Board of Adjustment for a term of 3 years to expire on January 31, 2024.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Widmer. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Otto. Any discussion? Questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item G, appointment of Mary Nell Todd to the Open Space Conservation.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the appointment of Mary Nell Todd to the Open Space Conservation Committee for a term of 2 years to expire on January 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Lentz. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a second from Commissioner Alexander. Is there any discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item H, budget amendment number 4. Alex, you want to cover that?
I do, and I apologize. The actual budget amendment itself fell out of the agenda packet. I made an update. Yes, it is at your desk today. what we're asking to do is to move $615 from the police department to the sanitation department. This would come from the savings in our line item for the dispatch services, since we are saving approximately $5,000 moving from Black Mountain dispatching to Buncombe County dispatching in this current fiscal year. We're asking to use $615 of that to purchase two waste stations, as presented to you a couple months ago. In your agenda packet on page 28, you do have some pictures of some locations where we're proposing to place them. One is on Assembly Drive at the junction of the Greenway and bike lane at the Columbarium. The other is at the corner of I believe that's Community Circle, headed up towards the lake, kind of where the trail ends. Also on Assembly Drive. So what we're proposing is to buy two stations, waste stations. We would buy the full packet because that's the full package because that's the cheapest way to acquire them. We would remove the dog bag box from the waste stations, and that would give us enough money for shipping and handling and concrete to the ground as well.
Okay. Any questions of Alex on this? These are the two dog waste stations.
Yes, Alex, I'd just be interested in the outcome of your discussions with MRA, because we were talking about partnering with them on this stinky subject.
I haven't had further conversations since the last time we spoke, but the MRA had agreed to the concept of putting them up at their trailheads. So they were looking for where their highest uses or most trash is, to see where they want to place them in the trailheads.
Other questions?
Yes. Alex, tell me again, I did not hear well. What did you say when you talked about removing the dog boxes?
So the waste station comes in a kit, and it has a sign, a trash can, and a box where you can actually pull out bags to use for collecting the dog waste. At our previous meeting, we talked about not providing those bags because we didn't create a dependency on bags. So we would remove that box, that portion from the kit. It was cheaper to buy them as a full kit than to buy them in all our part manufacturing.
Thank you. That was my recollection, but I just didn't hear. That's exactly what you said this time. Thank you.
Other questions of Alex or comments? We're not doing bags.
Not doing that.
Right.
So will this be kind of a test to see how it goes and then expand from there? You know, I think one of the biggest issues, and Barry can probably verify this, or Commissioner Ottos walks so much with his dogs, that the trailheads are really a big problem. Where do you see that problem?
My assumption would be probably would be from the gate going up to Lake Susan Trail, or the paved trail. That would be my assumption. Obviously, I think every trail you see people out with dogs, but I just thought, again, that's my assumption.
Trailhead's a private property. On ours.
What myself and the crew are seeing is, of course, the trailheads generate a lot of waste, trash. I mean, it's all the waste that's strung up. And we're seeing a whole lot of drop-off use in the snow areas inside. That's the two areas where we're seeing. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's bad.
suggested motion would be to approve a budget amendment by moving $615 from the police department to the sanitation department. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I so move.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Have a second. Further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. Thank you, John Hinkle, for bringing this to our attention. John, we're slow, but we finally get there. All right. Discussion with possible action about bagged leaf collection. Alex?
This item actually came from Commissioner Lenz.
So I will read this motion. I move to approve the following from the Firewise Committee with regards to leaf removal. The town's definition of contractor should not include college students and local handymen who are often hired by residents to clear leaves from their yards. That leaves are properly bagged and located at the roadside by college students and handymen be removed by the town as if the homeowner had done so.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Whitmer. Mayor Pro Tem Whitmer, excuse me. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor, just to say this is, again, an issue that has surfaced up from Firewise and land care folks on proposing a solution for getting our leaves picked up and out of the town. So that's why it's here. And I'm happy to be able to bring this forward.
Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you, Commissioner Lenz, for working on that. I would know that obviously that falls back on sanitation crew picking it up and such, and I trust that our neighbors are doing what they need to do in the right way and working with the system. Right? I will say that whether it's contracted out or students, I think sometimes these leaf bags end up, not always, but certainly time with a lot more debris and rocks, things that aren't in the leaf turn. So I just would like to encourage the neighbors when we contract it out with college students or a contractor that use the leaf bags when they're supposed to be used.
Thank you, Commissioner Otto. Thank you. Other comments? Okay, have a motion, have a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. Public comment.
Can I just ask a question? Alex, this isn't a change in any ordinance or anything, is it? Where was this stated that in college students and handymen couldn't do it?
College students and handymen weren't specifically cited. It was contractors, and the town has historically interpreted contractors to be anyone. So the rules is in the easiest place to find it. It's on the website, but it's also the easiest place to find it. It's in the postcard that sent out for sanitation calendars that states that private contractors, the debris collected by leaves and debris collected by private contractors will not be collected by the town.
So was that regulation?
It's a rule that predated me, but no, it was not an ordinance. Because it was a policy.
Gotcha, thanks.
We had a lot of trouble several years ago with contractors coming in and just, when they get through, they pile stuff on the street and expect the town to pick it up. Of course, the town's not going to pick it up if a private contractor did it. And then college students got involved, and some people have been confused with, are they private contractors and so forth. And I think this is just a clarification. Is that not correct? this is a way of clarifying it. Okay. Good.
Please, to Commissioner Otto's point of using the bags properly, one thing that also came up in these conversations with land care and otherwise is are the possibilities for residents putting their leaves in their own yard, just far enough removed from their houses such that otherwise standards are met, so that some of those leaves that you put the edge of your might like them bags. So your options are beyond killing the bags.
Great. Thank you, Alice. Appreciate y'all. And thank land care, of course, too, Firewise. Okay, public comment time again. Angela, you got a voice back? Okay.
The first one is from Emmy Hay Alexander Hancock of 307 Georgia Terrace. I want to bring to the attention of the town board my concerns regarding the proposed Lodge Hotel that the conference center plans to build in Montreat's oldest residential neighborhood. I own the home at 307 Georgia Terrace, the Hayloft. My family's ties to Montreat are long-standing and deep. In the early 1920s, my father and his siblings bought Mitchell Cottage on Appalachian Way, which at that time was the third of 3 houses built way up the mountain past the end of the road, reached only by a path. 6 generations of the Hay family have spent considerable time in that house, spring, summer, and fall, and still do. In 1959, my father bought our home on Georgia Terrace, and 5 generations have spent time here throughout the year. Montreat is more than just a place to us. It's a state of mind, a state of the heart. My grandmother often said that Montreat is the closest we can get to heaven, this side of the grave. I'm 86 years old, and I remember going to sleep at Mitchell Cottage by kerosene lantern. I remember storing our perishable foods in the ice-cold stream. I remember walking down to the lake area 3 times every day, to clubs, to church services, or to the post office and the general store, rain or shine. I even remember walking down the mountain in high heels on Sundays, and learned, like a lot of Montreat girls, that it is easier going downhill in heels if you walk backwards. My cousins and I were in clubs every summer. I was in Montreat Madness twice in the 50s, and once again just a few years ago. In recent years, my grandchildren were in clubs with the grandchildren of my friends from clubs. I've climbed Lookout numerous times and hiked all the trails, roller skated in the barn, made out on the bookstore porch, swam in Lake Susan. Heck, I even skinny dipped in Lake Susan. One summer, my dad left me up here with a bright yellow 49 Ford convertible. Everybody loved riding in that car. And one night, while I was in Black Mountain, the 3 wild boys from Texas sneaked up to Appalachian Way, took my convertible out of gear, and rolled it all the way to North Fork, where the highway patrol found it the next day. I met and fell in love with my first husband here. 2 couples in our family spent their honeymoons in our house on Georgia Terrace. My oldest grandson was married in Montreat. Such great memories have been made here, and my ashes will be stored at the Memorial Garden, where I can keep an eye on future generations. But I have other memories as well, and the one that makes me sad is the elephant in the room. It's the long-standing tension between the cottage owners and the MRA. I even remember asking my father about it. I've given it a lot of thought over the years, and it seems to me that the underlying problem is that there is no common shared vision among the 4 stakeholder groups: cottage owners, conference center, MRA, college, and town, for what Montreat should really be, but especially MRA and the cottagers. As a management consultant and strategic planning facilitator to corporations all over the U.S., South America, and Europe, I have worked with disparate groups, corporate, nonprofit, government, community, facilitating a future search to help them develop consensus about a shared vision. About 20 to 25 years ago, when some conflict or another was brewing here, I considered offering my services pro bono to facilitate sessions with the 4 Montreat stakeholder groups to try to build consensus for a common vision. I decided not to, of course, because of the perceived bias since I'm a cottage owner, but now I wish I'd urged you to find an outsider to do it. I still hope you'll consider doing this. It might help us all come together. It might help heal some wounds. This problem has grown. It seems that the MRA Conference Center sees Montreat as a resort, a cash generator, and we cottage owners and full-time residents see Montreat as a peaceful, quiet retreat where we can step away from the noisy commercialism of modern life and reconnect with God's creation. We believe that's what the founders intended Montreat to be. People who come to Montreat for a week in the summer expecting a resort will of course expect hotel-like accommodations. Those of us who live here full-time or who spend much of the year here with multi-generational families have a different vision. We don't mind sharing a bathroom, and we kind of like walking down the mountain from our homes to Anderson Auditorium. Their one-week resort vacation will become a year-round assault on our peaceful, historic residential retreat. This building project has peeled the scab off the relationship between the conference center and the cottage owners. Claims have been made publicly that the conference owner reached out to affected neighbors, asked for our input, opened a two-way dialogue, and got our support for the project. None of that has happened. As has been stated by other homeowners, no one initiated a conversation with us. We learned about the project by chance. The presentation to us presented a done deal, and several neighbors were informed that the conference center would eventually own their houses too. Let me be clear. We understand that the conference center has the legal right to do this project. And if it were a project in, say, downtown Charlotte, we wouldn't expect a developer to proactively reach out and inform us, much less to engage us in dialogue. But this isn't Charlotte. This is Montreat. As I said, this isn't just a geographic place. This is state of the heart. And it's a special place because of the kind of people who settled it and have been coming back for over 100 years. What we expected was a little human kindness, a reasonable amount of empathy for the pain and loss we are feeling, a heartfelt recognition that this project will forever change a little piece of God's world that we hope would never change. Instead, we got a threat. We're going to own your home too. Please reconsider this project, and please consider getting the stakeholders together to decide if Montreat is a resort or a retreat. Amy Hay, Alexander Hancock. This one is from Paige Webb. I was introduced to Montreat, as many others have been, through the invitation of a loved one, and was quickly enamored with the town. Montreat is the place we have turned to in these difficult times because of COVID-19. My boyfriend and I love to come up on the weekends, to walk around the peaceful town during the day, go hiking, and to sit on the porch and listen to the sound of the streams at night. I was recently informed that a lodge hotel is going to be built in the near future. I believe with the development of the hotel that the town will turn into a commercial destination rather than a place to disconnect and unwind. Sincerely, Paige Webb. The next one is from David Kirk. My name is David Kirk, and my wife Kate and I are partial owners of the adjacent property to the proposed hotel development project on Assembly Drive. This project would forever change the look and character of Montreat, and is being considered with no community input. Make no mistake, this project is a terrible idea. It would be irretrievably worsen the congestion of the area directly across from Robert Lake Park, which is used primarily by families with small children. It would negatively impact the value of our home, and more importantly, our quiet use and enjoyment, potentially hundreds of guests, 15 feet from our property line. Since many of you are residents of Montreat, I'm sure you share with me the joy and thankfulness of listening to the gurgling stream, looking up in the dark sky with wonder at the twinkling stars, or simply sitting on your porch and enjoying the peace and quiet of our mountain community. Now imagine hundreds of guests and their traffic coming and going 24/7, just steps from you where there were none before. I urge our leaders to reject this out-of-scale development in the historic heart of our precious community. David Kirk. This one is from Jane Frith Warner. Dear Mayor and Commissioners, I love Montreat. It is important to me that it remains a quiet and harmonious retreat, as it has been in my entire life. The addition of a hotel conference facility across from Robert Lake Park and the attendant destruction of a historic group of homes is really a terrible idea and will irrevocably change the tenor of Montreat. Richard DuBose, president of the MRA, has presented this plan as a done deal. But per Montreat zoning regulations, it requires a conditional use permit. This can be approved or denied. The people of Montreat should have a say in the future of Montreat. This is not solely up to Richard DuBose and the MRA, not at all. It is my hope that the town council and the mayor will consult cottage owners and Montreat residents as to their vision for the future of Montreat. For the 2008 Town of Montreat Comprehensive Plan and my own more informal survey, the vast majority of Montreaters want Montreat to stay the same as our forebears envisioned, and as have we experienced throughout our lives, a place of peace, of harmony with nature, of natural beauty, of kindness. I wish to ask the Mayor and the Board of Commissioners to please act in accordance with your mission statement, to seek ways to maintain and improve the quality of life, preserve the natural beauty, and promote responsible growth, while maintaining our community image, heritage, and traditions. The construction of this facility in this location does not align with the traditional overall goals of Montreat. I oppose this project. Sincerely, Jane Frith Warner. The next one is from Bryant McIntyre. I want to thank the Mayor and Commissioners for their service to our community. These civil servants and the employees of our town do miracles with the resources scraped together from our diminished and diminishing tax base. Our family supports the college. We appreciate being part of the Cottagers Association. We respect and admire our elected officials, and we have worked hand in hand with the MRA to keep conferences alive and well by moving out of our cottage for 12 months to host visitors. We appreciate my alma mater, Montreat College, and the MRA for their ministries and the distinct yet complementary vibes each brings to our valley. At this junction, I regrettably must refer to a significant breach of trust that occurred just a few short years ago when a new town hall was designed and planned for a location that did not fit the unique geography or functionality of Montreat. Building it on Florida Terrace was the only option. Money and opportunities were squandered. Precious productive time slipped through our fingers. Wow. Ad hominem and red herrings became commonplace, where civil discourse and robust, respectful debate once ruled such deliberations. Just as I sense a return to health for our township, the pandemic notwithstanding, I fear we as a community are on the precipice of yet another such devastating event. Just over a year ago, we moved back to our cottage from overseas due to the coronavirus. It wasn't long before survey teams were on every corner of our parcel and all of those of our neighbors. No matter how much I investigated, I could not get a straight answer on why such an investment was being made by the MRA. It wasn't until I received a phone call from Virginia from a cottage owner across the street who asked me if I knew of the MRA plan to build a 50-room hotel inside Collegiate Circle right beside our home. I knew nothing of it, and it seemed that she was almost as shocked by this fact as I was by her news. I highly doubted her account because I had MRA President Richard DuBose on my front porch recently and asked him directly what the MRA plans were for the adjacent property. He said there were no plans for the immediate property, and if there were going to be any changes, they would occur in the street. I reached out to Georgia Lodge, and they knew nothing, which astounded me due to their long-standing connections. I was cut off on that call because they were more doubtful than I was initially. I proceeded to personally contact everyone on our street, 299, 300, 303, 305, 307, 309, 310, and 313 Georgia Terrace, and not one single tax-paying cottager was aware of these plans. Only one resident on neighboring North Carolina Terrace knew of the plan, and he had only just found out via a phone call from MRA President Richard DuBose to get his initial thoughts on the plan. It was this gentleman's sister who called me from Virginia. My father-in-law, who has served as a Montreat commissioner, pointed out to me that the Hayner's cottage on 319 Assembly Drive would be right next to this 35,000 square foot building. I thought that they would surely know. When I called them, even they were not aware of it. I was in utter disbelief. I also that same evening called a commissioner who was only just finding out about the MRA proposal and showed skepticism when I said no one on our street knew about it. He said the understanding was neighbors had been informed and there was general support. Again, I reiterated the fact that no one knew until neighbors started calling neighbors. There was still pushback to clarify that I nor my neighbors were even informed, much less approached for feedback. Coincidentally, this same commissioner was to take a call from MRA President Richard DuBose the very next day about a proposal which happened to coincide with the regular town council meeting. Many of us in the neighborhood attended that February meeting by Zoom, hoping this call was to be part of it, even though we did not see it on the agenda. Indeed, it was not discussed, but an individual call was made to the commissioner mentioned above as I followed up personally after the town council meeting. Finally, the Hayner family arranged a Zoom with Richard DuBose, who kindly opened up the meeting at our request for the immediate neighbors and their families to attend. Our family has struggled this last month with the process and product of the MRA's intentions. We fully support the mission. In the end, we conclude that the lodge cannot be built inside Collegiate Circle as designed, no matter how any of us feel about it. This is after objective analysis of the facts, zoning, appearance relative to surrounding buildings, the purpose of the Collegiate Circle to the community, etc. We felt the images we have seen do fit the personality of Montreat overall, but the building cannot be built here. It is the size and increased hosting capacity of it compared to those buildings it will replace, as well as those that currently exist in Collegiate Circle, that contravenes current restrictions. The purpose of this RI zoning district, as described in section 704.1, is to provide for a zone of transition between purely residential and purely institutional districts. This section of our town, as one drives up or down Assembly Drive in its current balance and as intended, fits perfectly the judgmental term transition and so fulfills its purpose to provide for protected property values in areas which are predominantly residential in character. As full-time residents, we hear a great deal from our neighbors and visitors. It is intuitively obvious to even the most casual observer that this historic piece of property is predominantly residential in character, while its structures predominantly serve as an institutional purpose. Any new proposal must likewise fit this description. It is intuitively obvious to even the most casual observer that the new lodge absolutely and undeniably does not fit this standard architecturally nor in footprint, so it cannot be erected on this property. Such a behemoth, no matter how handsome, would in practice render the RI zoning to pure institutional use and appearance in primary practice by a rather overwhelming margin. Just add up all the square footage of what is MRA institutional at present, add in the new lodge, and compare that number to the total square footage of all the residents. That would be 3 homes. If allowed to go forward, this move is nothing short of a hostile takeover of a corporation. It is fine to state, please keep and enjoy your homes, but actions speak louder than words. I refer back also to the protected property values above. Mr. DuBose said our property values would increase, but upon reflection, I highly doubt it. The actual pool of potential purchasers for our homes will shrink considerably because as stated above, they will be, by default, slanted towards institutional use. The young family moving in will be attracted to homes in quieter, and I dare say safer areas with less traffic and noise. Like the town hall, the town council must put a moratorium on this plan in order to reach out to their constituents and taxpayers to gauge public sentiment. Yes, it does matter in cases such as this. The commissioners and ensuing appointed committees must vet this in light of the zoning ordinance's mission, just as eventually happened with the town hall. The MRA might turn out to be the biggest winner, as there exists amazing expertise, insight, and wealth in this valley. This isn't as simple as applying for a building permit, breaking out the gold-plated shovels, and cutting ribbons to get on with it. The Planning and Zoning Commission must review such a drastic alteration to the way Montreat will be impacted. It should not start making exceptions to fast-track this building simply because Mr. DuBose would like to break ground before the end of 2021, tear down 3 historic Montreat structures, and complete a new 48-room, 35,000 square foot hotel within 18 months with the stated purpose of taking the 75% of market share that cottages have hosted historically. Since the battle lines are already being drawn in like fashion of the town hall, such as, this is the only place that can be built, I'm predicting a rough landing unless the town council puts its structures committees and honors the definition of the zoning as described so that cottage owners' interests are protected. Long term, codification needs to happen so that these processes are not ad hoc and reactionary, but paced, informed, and well thought out by representatives of all Montreat stakeholders, so that her mission isn't broadsided and relationships bruised each time an MRA, college, or any sizable project presents. Why is there not a monthly meeting of the president of the college and the MRA, the Cottagers Association president, and the mayor commissioners, or an appointed committee of town council? It's inconceivable, really. Like the proverbial dysfunctional family, there is often disdain for each member because each is seeking its own way, following its own interest, without talking about the overarching needs of all in the family. Before the above suddenly appeared on the radar, I had intended to ask a few questions about relatively small things in comparison. I will hold on to these until we can see light at the end of this dreary tunnel so that they do not muddy the waters. Here's to hoping this will not turn into a half-decade of infighting like the last communal building and make cooler, wiser, and calmer heads prevail. Time will tell if we have learned any lessons from the very recent past or if we are doomed to repeat the putrid process. Even if the town council has shirked its responsibility to stay informed of community initiatives and failed to inform cottagers, this does not mean the MRA, college, or any other entity should take advantage of the situation. To the contrary, and since we proclaim Christ as predominantly, there is a moral obligation for those who want to bring the idea forward transparently and well in advance. Does humility exist today? We should help our brother when he stumbles. That did not happen last time, and we're certainly off on the wrong foot this time. Sincerely, Bryant McIntyre, Cottager. The next one is from Irina Hayner. Irina Hayner. I would like to express my deep concern over the proposed lodge construction by MRA right next door to my favorite porch in the whole world. This porch has been loved, cherished, visited, and entertained on for generations. I think my sister Kate has spent more time sanding and repainting the porch floorboards and railings than any other part of the house, and that's because it is the living room of the house. Inside our house, space is limited, so we always end up in small groups on the big wraparound porch. The most private part of it is over in the corner, by what I still call the Brinkerhoff's house, but is now Galak's house. Even though their air conditioner can draw out the sound of the stream, you can still find plenty of quiet moments sitting on that corner swing, watching the people walk by, looking at the mountains. The sound of the stream as I drift off to sleep will soon be a distant memory, if there is a huge building next door with a monstrous HVAC unit running it. To think that in the near future, someone expects us to sit on that swing and look at the entrance to a parking garage is heartbreaking. That's the swing Cousin Kenneth sat on when he told me I'm just like my grandmother and namesake, Irena Foreman Williams. I was so proud. And behind him were trees and the nice stones and porch of the house next door to us, just a few feet away. When people are on the porch of Galak's house, we have to pretend that we can't hear everything they're saying. It's that close. You could ask in a normal voice if you could borrow a cup of sugar. I like that about Montreat, how sounds carry, and how you can hear the children playing in the playground or rock hopping in the stream. But with the building next door that can sleep so many people, that is meant to bring in traffic, visitors, and meeting holders, that will have cars coming and going every hour of the day, it's impossible to even imagine how much the sounds will change. I urge you to preserve our peace, our quiet place of refuge, our memories of sitting on the porch with our grandparents. We would like our children and grandchildren to have the same view that our great-grandparents did, to hear the same sounds of birds and crickets and children playing, of water rushing over rocks, to still see the wildlife pass through and smell the neighboring pine trees. This is simply not the place to build a big lodge, and it is not the best thing for Montreat. Sincerely, Irena Hanger. The last one is from Heather Williams. Dear honorable members of the Commission, I write you with alarm about recently announced plans for a large conference center on Assembly Drive at the corner of Collegiate Drive. I've been informed after the fact that Richard DuBose, the developer and chair of the Montreat Conference Center, has consulted with the neighboring residents of the proposed complex and received their enthusiastic support. Well, I am one of the neighbors, the next door neighbor in fact, and I would never support this complex. And I would argue that the disturbance of tree cover, groundwater, excavation of the steep hillside, and the aesthetic mismatch of a giant corporate complex next to historic single-family homes and small boarding houses will be a light and an environmental menace. Along with my cousins, Ann Hainer, Irena Hainer, John Frederick Hainer, Priscilla Hainer, Kate Hainer, and Margie Hainer, I am the great-granddaughter of Mary Elizabeth Benedict Foreman, one of the early mayors of Montreat, who built her home, called By the Way, at 319 Assembly Drive in 1908. My grandmother Irena inherited the home and lived there with her husband, John Payne Williams, until just before her death in 1976. The home was subsequently inherited by my Aunt Margaret Williams Hainer, sister of my father, Timothy Alden Williams, and then inherited by my Hainer cousins and my second cousins in the Foreman family, descendants of Kenneth and Charles. I visit the home every summer and often during the year. We have maintained, By the Way, with great care and attention to the historical shape of the home, maintaining its small size and antique wraparound porch and historic colors. This has been a choice that suits us, but it is meant to preserve a precious part of the town's history and the aesthetic character of this original bit of Montreat. Certainly there are moments when we thought it might be convenient to have a much larger home on the premise, but we felt that preserving what our great-grandmother had built was more important for the community and for future generations. In this spirit, I ask you to consider the reasons I oppose the 50-room lodge, retreat center, capacious parking lot, and giant underground parking structure that would be erected about 30 feet from our great-grandmother's home are the following. Number 1, the proposed structure is entirely out of proportion to the surrounding structures. From the architectural drawings that have been released, the total built space of the proposed proposed conference is a staggering 100 times the area occupied by our ancestral home. It makes our home look like some kind of service shed. The placing of the building, with its back and its lodge windows looking straight into our living room and the first floor bedroom, would change our home forever. At night, lights from the complex will shine into our home. The noise from the cars, the service trucks and trash collection vehicles entering the complex, and the underground parking structure will also eclipse what we now have, which is the beautiful sound of Flat Creek below and the bird life just before dawn. Number 2, the proposed structure is corporate, cold, and compound-like. It doesn't have the character of the homes that currently exist, with the inviting front porches, wood construction, and wooded front lawns. Number 3, the proposed structure will affect the watershed and wildlife habitat severely. Flat Creek runs below the steep slope above Assembly Drive. The underground parking structure will involve excavation of a slope that undoubtedly contains moving groundwater that reaches Flat Creek. The excavation of the hill is likely to be problematic, with heavy erosion and even debris flows or mudslides if heavy rain events occur during construction. That can mean interruption of traffic on Assembly Drive, but it will also release large amounts of debris and sediment into a high-quality stream and aquatic ecosystem. Then, even if the mudslides and movement of large amounts of earth downslope are contained, there is a question of what the impact of concreting at depth will do to the watershed. There will be release of aggregate into the stream, as well as releases of hydrocarbons and metals from asphalting. In addition, the installation of large buildings with impermeable roof structures and a big parking lot and a drive at a steep slope will guarantee that you will have serious stormwater runoff from the site, with deleterious effects to the stream. Finally, the permanent loss of tree cover will have an impact on migratory bird habitat in an area of town that has mature trees and riparian access. The lodge will be an eyesore, a blow to the forest environment and wildlife habitat we so love about Montreat, as well as a source of light pollution, noise pollution, and water pollution. I was not consulted about this proposed lodge, and I ask that you decline to issue a permit for its construction. Thank you for your consideration, Heather Williams. And that's it.
Thank you, Angie, for reading all of those. You got your voice back in? Okay. Now, on the agenda, it's time for Commissioner Communication. Anybody have anything? Alice? Jane? Tom? Kent?
I do.
Good.
I'm hesitant to wade into this tonight, and I will, for the record, there is zero correlation to what I'm about to talk express, which is the comprehensive plan, and the letters that came out. I had done this work based off of our meeting a couple of weeks ago, discussion of the comprehensive plan. Interesting enough, it came up obviously a couple of times in the letters tonight. Believe it or not, I have read the majority of the 2008 over the past few years. I have read the majority of the comprehensive plan, and because we were talking about it and the line item of $30,000 spending, like, should we spend that kind of money going forward? But what have we done with the 2008 plan? So anyway, I just wanted to do a couple of quick highlights. The 2008 plan starts off talks about Montreat today. It says the MRA was established in 1907, college 1945, the town in 1967. It notes the natural beauty of this town and surroundings. It makes a comment that approximately 75% of the town is restricted from development. Notes growth coming in these areas: residential, college, MRA. Comment I thought interesting states 91% of the respondents believe the town's spiritual history is the foundation of this community and should be preserved. Notes the tax base in 2008 revenue, extremely large percentage of this community is tax tax exempt, which also states it's a burden for our community. Then it talks about Montreat tomorrow. Town will recognize the need for adaptive and construction management of new development and redevelopment of land and structures. Town will seek opportunities to coordinate and cooperate with the MRA and the Montreat College on matters of common interest, the accommodations of the needs of all three parties, and protecting the character and quality of life in the community. The town will embrace opportunities for alternative forms of land and housing types to broaden the range of housing choices. The town should also allow limited commercial development. So in conclusion, I took a roughly 150-page report and boiled it down into this one page. I believe it's time to go deeper in the conversations. So this is really my point. I think it's time for us to go deeper in conversation with our neighbors and institution on what path this community is truly on. If we do not act on some of these hard topics and have some of these hard conversations, I think we'll produce another $30,000 comprehensive plan that sounds good, but leaves change more to chance than true planning and action. And so, again, I'm generally not a fan of spending that kind of money, but I do feel like Montreat in 2008, if you read the plan, we were at a crossroads. Where's Montreat going? I'm not sure we defined that yet. You know, I hear the heart of cottagers. I hear the heart sometimes of Montreat College, the MRA, and certainly the pain that we have sometimes in the town to keep it going, keep our roads paved, and provide the services. All that being said, it takes hard conversations, and I would love to see our community step up and have some of these conversations be proactive versus reactive.
Good comments, Kent. Thank you. Nice, good insight. Since there were no other commissioners' communications, we'll move on. Dates to remember: annual commissioners retreat, part B, begins, this Wednesday, the 17th, 2021, 1 p.m. here in this building, 1 till 6. And it'll be through Zoom software. Montreat Tree Board, March the 23rd, 2021, 9:30 a.m. By Zoom software. Montreat Land Care, April 7th, 2021, 9 a.m. by Zoom software. Planning and Zoning Commission, April the 8th, 2021, 10:30 a.m. by Zoom software. And the next town council meeting will be April the 8th, 2021, 7 p.m. Location, method to be determined. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Widmer. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Otto. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Kent, Tom, Jane, Alice, and staff. We stand adjourned.